How is it that Taliban gains have happened so quickly? Are they facing no resistance from Afghan forces?
No, on the contrary, there has been fierce resistance, particularly in some of the besieged cities, some of the cities we just talked about, Kandahar, Lashkar. But I think what you're seeing happen is actually that over the course of the Taliban's advance, they're gaining momentum. That has had a really powerful psychological effect. And the Afghan government simply hasn't had a coherent strategy. The Taliban has stretched them across these cities, but hasn't managed to muster a means of fighting back. It's sort of fallen into the Taliban's trap rather than making strategic decisions which would help them, protect the major hubs like Kandahar, like Herat, which we have seen fall in the past day.
You're saying the government in Kabul has fallen into the Taliban's trap. How do they reverse course, or is it too late now?
I don't, the Taliban since early May has captured 200 of the roughly 400 districts in the country. It's captured 17, 18 provincial capitals. I frankly have lost count at this point. I think that's unlikely that you're going to get that back. The question is, at this point, how do you create a political settlement or something that averts the worst catastrophe, that averts a siege on Kabul? The worst case scenario is the government at this point digging in, the Taliban marching further on, not seeing the government surrendering, which is quite frankly what it would prefer, and the two sides fighting it out until the end. That would not only be a catastrophe, the end of the government, obviously, but it would be an absolute catastrophe for civilians. So how can the international community come together to convince both sides not to pursue that kind of next stage of the conflict?
Because one thing the international community is doing right now is threatening the Taliban that it will not recognize a government that has been imposed by force. But honestly, does the Taliban really care about that, whether it's recognized or not?
Yeah, I think, listen, the Taliban is not a homogenous movement. We have seen, especially over the past 2 years of their negotiating with the US and with the Afghan government, that there are different points of view within the movement. There are those more pragmatic, politically savvy leaders within the Taliban who do recognize that they don't want to be a pariah regime recognized by three countries as they were in the 1990s.
So
They
people who
know.
are sitting in Doha right now, where those talks have stalled?
Yeah, I think there are some of those, but on the other end of the spectrum, you have military commanders who listen. They have been skeptical of talks all along, saying we can force the US and its allies to leave. And when we do, the government will collapse and we can just take it without any compromise. So I think, within the movement, there are probably these debates and fierce discussions going on within the Taliban right now about the best course of action. But given the military advance, I would imagine that those hardline military voices are the loudest, most powerful voices right now, and
Exactly,
that's the
exactly.
concern.
And how do you rein in those fighters on the ground right now? Should the international community say place more pressure on Pakistan?
At this point, the Taliban has more than half of Afghanistan. I don't know what Pakistan's really going to do to stop this. The Taliban has been quite savvy all along, sort of playing Pakistan, resisting Pakistan, and that's a very fraught relationship. I don't necessarily think that Pakistan even has the ability to rein in the Taliban. They're going to do what they're going to do. I think the diplomats engaged are, quite frankly, trying their best, but since May, and even before, but since May, the international community really hasn't had its act together in terms of pressuring the Taliban because they didn't see this as a possibility. They underestimated profoundly the Taliban, and that's been the mistake for the past 20 years.
So what is a short-term solution in your opinion, considering that stationing troops in Afghanistan for 20 years has really done nothing? Look how fast the Taliban has resurfaced.
The world has a really strong moral and ethical obligation to Afghans. This could be a refugee crisis, the likes of which we have not seen. And the problem is the humanitarian appeal the UN operates right now for Afghanistan is 30% funded. The Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission has been calling for a fact-finding mission, for various diplomatic measures. for months. They have been ignored. There's a lot that the international community can do right now, at least to avert the worst suffering, to help refugees, to help asylum seekers, to help Afghans who we've promised the world to and have clearly abandoned.
Indeed. Ashley Dirks, I'm going to have to leave with that. Thank you very much.